Hi, I'm Susan Papanicholas from How Does Your Garden Grow in Seattle, Washington. It's the middle of July, and I'm here in my own garden to show you one of my very favorite plants in my garden for summer. This is Hydrangea Macrophylla, or big leaf hydrangea. This type of hydrangea is famously gorgeous for its giant clusters of vibrantly colored blossoms that last all summer long. I feel so lucky to live someplace where I can grow these hydrangeas and have them look so beautiful and add so much to the summer garden. This type of hydrangea has a wide array of flower colors available on it. It can go from white to pale pinks and pale blues to bright pinks and bright blues, all the way to magentas and deep purples. There's so many colors to choose from. And there's also two different flower forms on this species of hydrangea. Mine is a mophead, and that means it has this sort of dome of sterile flowers. These flowers that have these big flat petals on them are sterile. They don't have any pollen on them. They don't produce nectar. They don't attract pollinators. They're just a showy flower. They don't do anything to make a seed, and they're really spectacular. So when all of the flowers are sterile like this, they create a dome, and it's called a mophead hydrangea. The other flower form on this hydrangea is called a lace cap. A lace cap hydrangea has sterile flowers, these big showy flowers, in a ring on the outside of the flower cluster. And then in the center of the flower cluster, there are fertile flowers. Those will attract pollinators. They do have pollen on them. They do produce nectar. They could make seeds. I don't know anybody who's growing hydrangeas from seed, but they do have a really different shape to them and a really different look. That flower tends to be much more delicate and is also really beautiful, but almost looks like it could be a different species altogether. They're the same species with two different flower forms. When you're shopping for a hydrangea, you'll see they'll either have one flower type or the other flower type. That depends on the variety of hydrangea. For color, some varieties of hydrangea are the color they're going to be no matter what the soil acidity is. Mostly the whites and the magentas and the deeper colors tend to be that color, and it does not depend on soil acidity. Some of the pinks and blues can vary depending on soil acidity. A more acid soil will make for a more blue flower, and a more alkaline soil or a less acidic soil will make for a more pink flower. I don't know what variety of hydrangea this is. I inherited this hydrangea when I bought this house 25 years ago, and it often has this kind of multitude of colors that range from pink to blue. And I don't know if that is because of soil acidity or just what this variety does, but I love it. This type of hydrangea thrives in partial shade to total shade. I wouldn't put it in deep, deep, deep shade. I don't think you'd get quite as voluptuous of a flower display in really, really dark shade. But in this open shade like I have here on the north side of my house, it does fabulously. Most hydrangeas like a lot of water. This one is no different. It really needs to be well irrigated in the summer to keep the leaves looking bright green and the flowers looking fresh. One of the things that's important to know about this type of hydrangea is that it blooms on old wood. That means that this summer and fall, it's making the flower buds, they're dormant inside the stems, you can't see them, but it's making those flower buds for next summer's flowers. And that becomes really important for two reasons. One is, in a climate that gets very, very, very cold in the winter, sometimes those buds can be damaged and you don't get a great flower display the next year. Also, when you're pruning this plant, you want to be aware that the flower buds are already there. So I don't want to give this a really severe haircut in the fall or winter, or I'll lose next year's flowers. It won't hurt the plant, but I won't get a great flower display. So what I try to do to prune this plant is mostly I just deadhead it in the winter. I just take off the dried flower stems. I often don't do that until late winter, but I could do it at any time between fall and spring. Just snap off or cut off those old flower stems. If the plant has gotten very congested in the center, if it's gotten too big, if it's outgrown its space, I could come in and cut out old stems at the base, like remove an entire cane. I don't do that very often. This plant has been in this space for over 15 years. I did a pretty heavy pruning on it 2 years ago, and last year I didn't have very many flowers at all. This year though, oh my God, I'm so excited. Look how beautiful this looks. So I don't do a heavy pruning on it very often, but when I do, that is my approach, is to go down to the base and take an entire branch out rather than trying to shorten all the branches way down. And I definitely just want to be aware when I'm doing that, that the buds are already there. So I want to be careful about taking out too much of the stems if I want to have a really nice flower display the next year. This hydrangea leaves out in early spring. It's one of the first plants to leaf out in my garden, and I really enjoy watching those new leaves unfold. They're really pretty and a fresh welcome sign of spring. Then it'll have green leaves on it until early summer when the buds start to expand. The buds start out as tiny little clusters and then gradually expand and get more colorful as they open. Later in fall, the flowers get a little dusky in color. They dry up a little bit and can get kind of a more muted tone of whatever color they are. And I find that to be a really beautiful fall aspect of this plant as well. At that time of year, I cut them more often. They last in a vase a really long time when they've gotten more mature. And then in winter, it will lose its leaves entirely. I'll have brown clusters of flowers left on the plant. I can prune those off or deadhead this plant by just cutting to a set of buds right below the flower and leave it until it reemerges in spring. So it's an easy plant to take care of. It likes shade, it needs some water, and it gives you this gorgeous, 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 vibrant display of flowers that last all summer long.